For me, the best part of my work is the feedback from the people. You know, often because my music is about something and it represents something, I hope. You know, often I meet people, even older people my mum's age, people my grandmother's age, and they tap me and say, "Yo, young brother, I respect what you're doing. You know, keep representing." So the love from the people, I think, is the best part of what I do. I think the driving force behind where I am today was the way I grew up. You know, some people say the way I grew up was difficult, at least by Western standards. You know, I didn't grow up with my dad, and we didn't have a whole lot of money, and you know, I went through certain experiences in the street and whatever else. I'm not saying I was no big bad man because I wasn't that neither, but the regular stuff that teenage boys growing up in the inner city without a whole load of money go through. But at the same time, I had my godfather, who was a great role model. I had enough support around me. I went to a Pan-African Saturday school. My stepdad was the stage manager at the Empire, so I had a lot of cultural input that I think gave me the strength to propel me towards wanting to achieve something with my life and hopefully having done that. The way I got started in the music industry was via a long route. You know, I used to play football. I used to play for West Ham United as a teenager. Then I moved into, our first business was a restaurant. I opened a Jamaican food restaurant in Cyprus. And then I wanted to go into music, and I set up a record label with 3 partners, Andy Dormant, Reza Safina, and my sister Naomi, and we set up Illustrate Records. And since then I've just been independently releasing music. I did a mixtape in 2004, put out a video on Channel U, and that's sort of where it all really started. When I was younger, I wanted to be a footballer for a long time, but I also always wanted to be involved in music and poetry, and I've been writing lyrics since I was 5, 6, 7 years old at the latest. So I think really deep down I always wanted to do what I am doing. Yeah, definitely I've been discouraged at times and been disappointed. Like I said, when you start figuring out the way the industry actually works and how little it has to do with the quality of your music and how much it has to do with the politics of who you know, whether your face fits or not, what record label you're on, what you are or are not saying politically, that is a difficult thing to stomach. But you get used to it and you realise, especially if you start to learn about the world, that it's not the biggest injustice going on in the world, that the music industry is the way it is, you know? And so that has discouraged me for a time, but never long enough to want to give up. I think the key to getting to where I am today is having a good team. Being able to inspire people to work hard even when there's not a lot of money in it, even when there's not a lot of obvious clear-cut reward. Being able to inspire people to want to work with you and for you and together as a team, I think is the most important thing, because no one achieves anything on their own. You need a strong team. I think the way I grew up was contradictory. On the one hand, as I was saying to you before, I had a lot of negative social forces around me. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I didn't live on the estate. I lived 2 roads off the estate. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a council house, but as far as council housing goes, it was quite nice. You know, one street in the other direction is millionaires, one street in the next direction is a council estate, and London's like that. Yeah. And I was sort of in the middle. So when I went to my friends' houses in Harsden or Tottenham or wherever else, I could always come home, because I didn't really hang around with that many people from my area. So whatever beef we'd be in or whatever stupidness we'd be up to, I could always come home and sort of get some respite from it. So I grew up, my upbringing was not wholly negative and it wasn't wholly positive. There were some negative experiences, but there were also some very, very positive experiences. And I think the balance of the two, having enough road experience and going through enough things that people can relate to me, but also having enough of a mum there, for example, who was like, if you don't get your education, I'm going to kick your ass, basically. It allowed me to sort of tread both paths, I think. Say, I would give examples. For example, one of my closest friends, who had just as rough or maybe a more rough upbringing than I did, he's a trauma surgeon, right? He makes far more money than most rappers. Think about it, right? In England, there's thousands of rappers. A tiny few of us make a living from the careers as rappers, right? The rest of them, should I say, don't make much money from rap. I would say they're better off going and getting a degree.
Percentage-wise?
Yeah, I would say 99% are not making a living off rap. Wow. I would say it's 1% or less when you really think about it. There's a handful who've been successful on a pop level. Then there's a handful who've been successful on an independent level. Myself, Loki, a couple others, you know, who've been successful on an independent level and can make a living. But other than that, most of the rappers are not making any money off rap. It's not good odds. Whereas the odds of you being a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, being able to invest your money, having a clear vision, all of those things are much stronger odds. If you study and you do the work, you'll get there. So for me, even if someone's not into the traditional path, college, uni, etc., then at least be an entrepreneur and think outside the box. Try and get into property. Try and get into something that allows you to be your own boss. I'm not personally a capitalist, but I understand we live in a capitalist system, and the more people can become self-sufficient and build communities and alternative ways of doing things, I see that as a positive move. So I'm not saying to people just go out, get money, money's the be all and end all. I think that even if you make money, it's about investing that money in alternative structures, because the current structure we have, I don't think is very just. But the stereotype of black people as just entertainers also comes from people not knowing their history. If we don't know what was going on in ancient West Africa with the kingdoms of Mali and Timbuktu, and what was going on with the Igbo and the Yoruba, etc. in West Africa, the things they were actually building, the mathematical systems that they were dealing with. If we don't know what was going on in Haiti or Brazil or Jamaica or wherever else throughout the last couple hundred years, then, and the only vision you see is the entertainer, the rapper, the American football player, the basketballer, the footballer, you start to believe that that's the only course that people like you can go on. But in reality, it's nonsense, and we need to start encouraging our children and make them understand the power of maths and science and language, because that bridge right there wasn't built by a footballer, it was built by an engineer, you know. And the engineer who designed that probably made a whole load of money and has changed society in a much more definite way than just someone who kicks a football around or who raps a little bit like me. Whoever designed this bench, or the way that they melt metal to make this bench, you know, those things, science, engineering, mathematics are the most important things. That's what builds societies, not entertainment. Entertainment is an add-on. So even though, yeah, I'm technically an entertainer, I wouldn't encourage people to get into that. I'd encourage people to get into the hard things that you need to build a community and to build a society.
Amazing.
Well, it's easy with the qualifications. I only have GCSEs. I went to college a little bit only because I was playing football and we had to, and I didn't go to university. But I'd still read a lot and study a lot and make sure I have my own curriculum and set my own plans. And so in terms of like having a plan B, you know, the restaurant I opened, even though it wasn't as financially successful as I'd like it to be, that helped train me to try and be my own employer and build up a structure. So I'm sure if I wasn't making music, I know it's not only music I make. With the Hip Hop Shakespeare Company, that's an education company. We do educational work both in the UK and internationally. We do music theatre production work, and that's a company that myself and just a few others run as a company. And the skills that I've got from the discipline from playing football, the entrepreneurship from the restaurant that didn't really work out, I've been able to put into this other thing that helps me make a living, but also helps me give back and try and spread education a little bit.
So that was...
Well, I think many of the things that people say are valid. You know, racism exists, classism exists, sexism exists, broken homes and abusive homes exist, and all of these things are problems and barriers. So I wouldn't say to people that they're necessarily making excuses. I would say those things really exist. What I would try and do is give people the tools to overcome them. And the tools to overcome them are knowledge of self, self-pride, learning, becoming good at something. When you become good at something, you automatically have a certain amount of pride, whatever it is you're good at. And you don't feel the only thing you can do. You know, think about how many boys, you know, you might have grown up with, or I've grown up with. I think the only thing they can do is be on the roads or play football, right? But if they had a certain amount of pride, if they had a different educational system or learnt more about themselves and where they come from, all of a sudden they start to feel there's wider possibilities. So for me, I would just say to people, look at the consequences. I look at the odds, right? All of the boys I grew up with who didn't make it at football, who thought the only thing they could do is be on the roads, where's their life now? And my few friends, like my doctor friend, like my architect friend, like my other friend, I've got another friend who's a qualified physiotherapist. He went to prison for 12 years, right? In Jamaica. So you can imagine, prison and yard is a whole different thing to here. And I look at what he's doing with his life now and how much he's turned his life around. That's amazingly positive, but he would be the first to tell you wish he didn't have to go for all of that, and he could have just paid attention from the beginning, because he'd be 15, 20 years further on than where he is now. So to me, it's about recognizing that all of those barriers that are put there for a reason, you know, and how do we structure things in such a way that we can support each other? How do we make it, rather than if I see you and it's a screw face thing, where you from, cousin, all that idiot thing. It's like, yo, what are you man up to? How can we link? How can we connect? Because all we've got is each other.
Network.
Yeah, the society isn't there to support young black males. That's not what it's there to do. You get a few exceptions, myself and a few others, who they might hold up as tokens and say, look, they made it, why can't you be like them? But in reality, there's way more of us in prison or dead than there is doing that. So it's not that what people say is not valid, it's how can we make alternatives. I think education is the only way for everybody, not just black kids. For anyone coming from any background, education is the only way forward. That doesn't necessarily have to mean school and university, it can be self-education. Some of the most influential people ever, like Marcus Garvey, for example, were self-educated. So you can be self-educated, you can read and study and do your own thing, but it's about having a pride in that. And again, if you grow up in a society like this, or even in a lot of societies in Africa or the Caribbean where the curriculum still only teaches you about white people's achievements, you'll believe that your people never contributed nothing to maths, to science, to technology, to art. Whereas when you start learning alternatives and the facts, which I was lucky enough to do because of this Saturday school that I went to as a kid, you feel an entitlement. And so to me, studying history is tremendously important. It's everything, it's very important. If you look at this country, the reason why this country feels so proud, British, is because of the history, because of Shakespeare, Milton and Isaac Newton and the Industrial Revolution and all of these things. You take all of that away and it doesn't really mean much to be British, right? So if we don't understand what our contributions have been, then of course we're not going to have much pride. So it's very, very, very important to know your history as well. And that's where education is the key. No, I mean, I think the system is definitely, not only is it there to hinder young black males, it's there to hinder working class white children, it's there to hinder Asian children, it's there to hinder anyone who's not from a particular elite. If you look at senior government in this country, 85% of them go to Eton and then Oxford and Cambridge, right? If you look at senior BBC, you know, so there's an established classist hierarchy that we're not part of. There's no doubt some people use that as a lazy excuse, but that doesn't change the fact that it does exist and it's very real. If you're a young black male, there are very real barriers in your way throughout your life. You're going to get to 12 years old, police are going to start treating you like a criminal, whether you're a criminal or not. That happened to me, I'm sure it happened to you, I'm sure it happened to the guy holding the camera, right? You start getting stop and search, you start having to deal with conflict with other people that no one explains you where it came from. Teachers assume you're dumb, etc., etc., etc. So racism is real. So I'm not cussing people for having an issue with it. Again, what I'm saying is I'm trying to give people the tools to be equipped to deal with it, which is what I think I was given. And when that happens, you won't have to make excuses because you'll know that these barriers exist, but you're going into the fight prepared. If you go into a fight and you ain't never done no boxing, you ain't done no kickboxing, you ain't never trained, you're gonna get an arse whooping, right? Whereas if you go into the fight and you've got a little bit of preparation, you might even lose, but you'll give a good account of yourself, or you might win. And so for me, it's about trying to give people the training and the tools to cope with the racism that exists, the classism that exists, all the problems in society that exist. I can't really, to be honest, in the sense that there aren't enough jobs for everybody. So we can encourage loads of people, but there's always going to be someone left holding the short straw. That's the way capitalism works. So even if everyone's focused and everybody works hard, there's not enough jobs for everyone. There's not enough, well, there is enough money for everyone, but the way the system works, it depends on some people being poor and others being rich.
So you believe this is a capitalist system?
Oh, of course. And it's a system that relies on exploitation. It just so happens that this country got to a point of development where it could send all its exploitation outside its borders to Asia, to Africa, to other parts of the world. Before it did that, the exploitation was of working class people inside this country. So to me, that exploitation has continued, but just in a varied form. So it's too difficult for me to just say, well, just keep your head up and keep going, because some people are in very real, very negative scenarios. But that is all I'd be able to say, is try and keep your head up, try and focus. But I don't believe in the, if you just work hard, you'll make it. I do believe that there are real problems in society, that yes, you can work hard, yes, you can be focused, and that increases your chances, but it doesn't guarantee. Because if hard work, as George Monbiot said, if wealth was the inevitable result of hard work, then every woman in Africa would be a millionaire, right? The women in Africa work far harder than any men in the West. But who's got the money? The women in Africa or the men in the West?
The men in the West.
Right? So, to me, and even in Africa, the women haven't got equal power to men. So, to me, to say if you just work hard, you'll make it is not the whole story.